It seemed like they had 8 teams of horses. Would be 16 head of horses on the fire. They
So when you
worked
say,
in a circle.
yeah, so when you say they, this is granddad or granddad and great granddad probably also, or
Well, it would have been my dad.
mostly
Because
him?
at that time, after they come to Idaho, my granddad, Pat Slyman, wasn't too able to do as much.
Oh, okay.
So that would have been, Uncle Elias owned the thrash machine. And they all got together like we did when we thrashed, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But they always stacked their grain. They cut out the binder and then stacked the bundles, and then they'd go from one place to another and set up the thrash machine and do that thrash and move to the next neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like Dad said they was down to Will Hawk's thrashing. I'm not sure about that. And Will Hawk, he always done the driving on the horse fire. He took care of it, kept the horses moving. Well, they'd come in a circle, and that turned the machine. They had a tumble rod, what they called, that connected to the sweep. And that turned the tumble rod, that turned all the works of the separator. Well, as they come around, the horses had to step over the tumble rod. As each team come around. And he'd always have his team on there. He had one, he called him, let's see. One that he called Buzz, and I can't remember the other one's name. And he'd set up there on the driver's seat with a whip. Just some of the horses were lagging a little as they come around. He'd pop them one. And he said, Buzz, Dave, Buzz and Dave. He's hard. Buzz, Dave, tighten up, Buzz, Dave, tighten up. And then he'd sing, he was from England. He'd start with some of them old English songs, and he'd say, the way one went, I've heard Dad say that, tell that, he says, the way the song went, I owe $10 to McGrady. And then he'd holler, Buzz, Dave, tighten up. I owe $10 to McGrady. And then he'd go on with his song. But every time Dave and Buzz come around, he'd holler, Dave, Buzz, tighten up. They was thrashing down there one day. They come up a quick lightning storm. And the lightning was hitting right close around. And the horses get excited and run away. Dad says they were just making things burn. And pretty soon that machine started coming apart. The tumbling rod just flew in every direction. He said they just literally wrecked that machine. He said, well, after the storm was over, we had a week to get things fixed and put back together before we could thrash again. He said, oh, well, that was always his job. He wanted to do the driving. Dave, Buzz, tighten up. Yeah, he said they thrashed all around here, and then the Listons had a ranch over there between the buttes, right where that elk farm is. That's the old Liston homestead in there pocket where the elk pasture is. And they had rattlesnakes till you wouldn't believe it. Dad said, so the Listons had Uncle Elias move the machine over there and do their thrashing. So they was over there, and they had trouble with the cylinder. They had to do some work on the cylinder that pounded the grain out. So they had to drop the cylinder down to put new teeth in it or something. And when they went to put it back, Uncle Elias got one of his fingers in and mashed his finger. Had a hell of a sore finger. So they was over there thrashing, and So when it come noon, of course, everybody said, you come in the house for your dinner. So Mrs. Liston had dinner ready, and so they all got washed and sat down at the table. And so Mrs. Liston come around, and she walked around the table right behind all of them. And she said, tapped Uncle Elias on the shoulder, and she said, Brother Merrill, would you return thanks? He held his finger up and he says, I can't. I got a sore finger. He said, so everybody started laughing. She got to laughing and she had to leave the room.
So were some of the brothers more, they were kind of characters too, like Granddad was then?
They what?
Were some of his brothers kind of characters like Granddad was too then?
Uncle Elias, yeah.
Mm.
Uncle Will was the opposite.
Mm.
He was the absolute opposite. Yeah, Uncle Elias, he was quite a guy. He was telling about when him and Fleet. Now, you remember me talking about Fleet? He was a Merrill, Fleet Merrill, and I've heard Dad say what relation he was, but it's a distant relation of ours, out of Smithfield. Him and Uncle Elias grew up together. If one got in trouble, I guess the other one did too. So they decided they was gonna look for greener pastures, so they come up here in this country. And they wound up over on the Teton River. They built him a cabin over there, not too far from where Beaver Dick and his family lived. And they decided they'd winter there. Well, when they come up, they went back to Smithfield and got some supplies for winter. And another young fellow that they knew decided he wanted to come with them. So the three of them come back up here and went to winter. And he said in the evening, they'd build up a fire, and sometimes Beaver Dick and his family'd come over and to be mingled. Sometimes they'd go to Beaver Dick's. And so he said, get along about February, I think, as I remember, about February. This other guy got homesick. Oh, he was sick. He wanted to go back to Utah. Well, no roads, snow 7 feet deep, and well, if you want to go, you might not live to get there. Head out. Well, no, he didn't dare to go. So one night they was sitting there, and he was so despondent. He said, "I want you to kill me, shoot me." So Uncle Elias and old Fleet, they figured it out. That's what he wants, we'll do it. So they takes the shell or the bullet out of the rifle bullet, and they put a piece of raw potato in it. And so they said, all right, if that's what you want, we'll get you out of your misery. Line up there by the wall. So he'd get up and stood by the wall. I said, I don't know whether it was him or the Fleet got the rifle. Now he said, where do you want me to shoot? One of them said, where do you want me to shoot you? He said, right here. He pulled down on him, and when it hit, of course, that piece of potato stung like the devil. He fell to the floor, and he said, Uncle, I believe it was Fleet that shot him. He says, Uncle Elias says, I went over there, and he says, you got him, Fleet. Or you got him. You got him right where he wanted. And then he did get panicky. He said that we had to talk like a Dutch uncle to talk him out of it. He said we was afraid he was going to die. I've heard Uncle Elias tell that when I was a kid.
shoot.
That's before Beaver Dick's family got the smallpox, and he lost all them kids that one winter,
Mm-hmm.
and his wife too. That's how they got her to come up here. Uncle Elias, found this ground down here, and it was when they opened it up for homestead, and he grabbed that 160 acres, and then he coaxed Uncle Will to come up here. He said, if you'll come up here, that's after see, Uncle Will married a girl there from Richmond. Her name was Nettie Olson. She was Olive's mother. Now, Olive was Ari Killian's mother.
Mm.
And when they had Olive and a little boy, and the little boy died when he was just a little fella. And then Nettie died. His wife died. Well, then he went on a mission for 2 years, Will did. And Grandma Merrill kept Olive while he was on a mission. And when he came back, Uncle Elias got a hold of him and said, if you'll come to Idaho, I'll give you half my homestead. So Will took him up on it. He came up and Uncle Elias split the homestead, give him the West 80, and Uncle Elias kept the East 80.
Mm.
And that's how they both come to Idaho. He wanted Fleet to stay. When he decided to stay in Homestead, Fleet said, "The hell with it. I've had all of Idaho I want. I'm going back to Utah." And I don't remember whatever become of Fleet. I don't remember Dad ever saying what become of Fleet. But I think somewhere, I don't know whether we've got it or not, but somewhere in the pictures, we had a picture of Uncle Elias and Fleet when they were up here. They looked like Daniel Boone and his buddy. I don't know whether we've got that picture or not.
Did we scan
I think
that?
we scanned one
I think
in.
we scanned one of those a week or two ago.
Yeah.
I think we scanned that a week or two ago. It was
That was on
in
the,
Grandma's box or in some of yours or something.
Could have been. Yeah, I in my mind, I'm sure we've got a picture of Uncle Elias and Fleet. They looked like they were dressed in buckskin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we scanned that one just a week or two ago.
Oh, Uncle Elias said, oh, the game was so plentiful. He said one winter, after he established here, he said, I had 6 deer and 6 elk hanging up in my granary.
Hmm.
It was just so plentiful.
Mm-hmm.